following program is a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.
And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market. From unusual activity alerts to market updates and trading strategies. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block. With your host, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com and co-hosts Mike Tusaw from KnowYourOptionsInc.com and Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by Options Express. Don't spend time worrying about your broker. At Options Express, security, stability, and account protection are the most important responsibilities to our customers. Secure account access, enhanced financial protection, entrusted with over $7 billion in customer assets, established financial stability. Options Express lets you trade with confidence. Stocks, options, and futures, all in one account. Trade with a specialist. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio to open your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
Welcome back to the Option Block, your bi-weekly source for options, wit, wisdom, and occasionally, on the very rare occasion, hilarity. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, and as you can tell from the background noise there, we're not exactly recording live from our studio today. We've actually picked up the whole show on the road and moved it on down to the new Option Pit HQ here, which is conveniently located right next to the L track, which is very convenient from a commuting perspective, but from an audio perspective, not so much. But it's very close to the exchange.
We can see the board. We can see the grain room right there.
Yeah, you can reach across. You can wave to the old.
If I could throw a baseball through the window,
you can reach. You can wave to the 85-year-olds who are still down in the grain room.
Golf balls into the grain room.
Oh, that'd be awesome! Imagine you knock out a window over
like
there.
Tiger Woods in the commercial.
That'd
be sweet.
That would be
pitch
good.
golf balls.
As listeners, as you can tell, since we are in Option Pit HQ, we are joined by both of the boys from the pit, both Mark and Andrew. The first time we've had you on before together on the show, but never live before. This is the first time
this is fun.
we've ever done it live in the same room. This is actually the first time I've ever met Andrew face to face. And listeners, may I say, it is indeed a treat. Yeah. If you can go up to Maine and meet Andrew in person, I recommend you do it. He cooks a mean lobster, and he's a handsome man.
Do you think that you could hit a golf ball from home plate over the Wrigley Field scoreboard?
The scoreboard? Yeah. You can hit it into the stands. I don't know about the scoreboard.
No, I mean over.
For sure.
Here's the problem.
He's only 450 feet.
Yeah,
right?
That's quite a loft to get to.
Well,
you can hit the scoreboard.
That's the thing.
Over
you could get the distance with a driver.
It's 130 par.
You could hit the distance with the driver.
130
you could
yard.
but you'd need the height of at least a 7
You
or
could
an
crush
8
a 7
iron.
iron.
Yeah.
You could.
Yeah. Now,
I guess if Tiger Woods got up there with a 7 iron, he might be able to
all
do
the way.
it. Yeah.
Well, he could, but all the way out there is probably it's probably almost 500 feet.
Look at it as a 140-yard elevated par 3.
150
elevated
yarder.
green.
Super elevated.
150
on a mountain.
super elevated green.
I'm not sure where you're playing these
difficult.
days, Sean. You play some serious par 3s.
Are you a good course?
Speaking of which,
player?
we are also joined by Sean Fitzgerald holding down the old Options Express hot seat.
We like to call him Fitzy.
Mr. Fitz, or the others will call him.
people
Sean,
call you
welcome to the
Fitz?
show.
Fitzy's fine.
The magical Mr. Fitz.
Yeah.
Big Fitz.
It all works. It's good to see everyone in person. Put the faces on the Skype voice to eye to eyes, and everybody's looking good here today.
Yes. With the team assembled, we are going to dive right into the trading block.
The trading block.
All right, and welcome to the trading block. This is, of course, where we break down the day's worth of action, and it wasn't exactly a super action-packed day today, but at least it was better than last week when we were 0.0% unched on the day.
This was the most volatile day that we've had in 10 days.
Easy.
Well, that's quite a
By
quite a
far.
frame of reference. Next, you're not 11, maybe 12.
10 trading days.
10
Actually, if you added up all the volatility of all the other 10 days,
It would be less than
it
this.
would be less than
Yeah,
this.
you're probably right.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of meat in this relatively modest movement. Speaking of movements, Andrew, why don't you show us where we closed here on the day?
In the S&P 500, we closed 1399, spot 48, down 11
Ooh,
handles.
just below that 1400 level. We'll
Just
see whether
below.
whether we can bounce up from here.
The VIX, though, only up 4.5%, so the VIX move was a little light. Up to 1783, up 77 cents. Those are the two biggies. Everything else we really don't care about. Apple, we'll add that. Our lovely Apple stock was down. Wow, $9.50 to $663.86.
Wow, it can actually sell off.
It can go down.
Too bad Uncle Mike is not here. He would be able to give us a play-by-play on all the fun Apple stuff. But those guys over at KYO are busy filling out those brokerage migration forms, and that could be, I've heard, a very fun and lengthy and engaging process.
Yeah,
So
I think
they're
that-
tied up in that. Maybe they're just dodging us. I don't know, one or the other. Speaking of Apple, maybe we'll start there because the biggest news of the past week or so has been, of course, that whole just complete debacle of a court case out in California where Samsung pretty much won absolutely nothing and Apple just
destroyed.
tore them a new one. It's amazing to see. And you could see on a lot of levels how to the mainstream person who's sitting on that jury, maybe tech savvy, maybe not, but I think the bulk of them weren't, how you can look at things like icons and other things like that and say, wow, there actually is, and apparently some very incriminating internal documents from Samsung saying, here's what we're going to copy from the iPhone, here's what we're not.
Yeah.
And combine those two, and you could easily see how
I didn't know that was
a
in there.
jury. Well, it probably wasn't that explicit, but it was something along those lines.
Yeah.
So you can easily see how a jury of lay people would say, "Wow, there is some infringement."
you know,
here.
congratulations. I think that is the first drop in the demise of Apple.
You think that's the starting point? Huh?
Yeah, as soon
when
as
they have
you're
to sue for profits as opposed to
they're suing to protect their property, which is going to, instead of innovating to protect themselves. So, I mean, I think that they're now at a place where they're going to that something like this stops innovation. It's going to force Samsung to think outside the box to build something competitive,
An oval smartphone
and
next
it's going
time.
to also open the door for the Microsoft OS or to work, to potentially work. I just think
Is he calling
in
the
3
top
years,
Apple?
in 3 years, Apple is going to be significantly lower than where it's currently trading.
You heard it today. Buy the leap 3.5 puts, says Mark Sebastian in Apple.
There you go.
Maybe 2014.
You could do a flex. You could do a
Problem is
flex.
that they cost $200.
You could do a flex option. I need a flex put
We
spread.
should quote up those 3.5 puts and to see what's going on out there. 2015 Jan 3.5 put. I want that quote. We'll call up the CBO for an e-flex right now.
Yeah,
Kyle,
that'd be
get on
great.
that, please, sir, as we're recording.
We could just we could generate a fake quote on it right now with using this LiveVol tool.
Oh, yes. That's right. They have the LiveVol tools. Free plug for our friends over at LiveVol.
Yes, free plug.
But yes, it's interesting. There has been so much back and forth about this decision, how it's such a epic thing, and yet in many ways, it is one division of Apple suing one division of Samsung. These are both enormous companies who make a lot of different things. In fact, Samsung is one of the chief suppliers of all the parts for Apple's phone, so it's not like they're going to stop working with each other anytime soon. And also, I think one of the interesting things that might come up on the appeal for this is that there was a Samsung device that was left out. The judge said you can't show this into evidence because it's a media player, but it's called the Samsung F700. And if you look at that device, it is essentially an early iPhone. And the debate rages of whether it was introduced in late 2006 or early 2007, but it was at the very least commensurate on the same time as the iPhone release. So there's apparent that there was some IP sharing perhaps going on loosely. You used to use that term loosely. Either Samsung copied them, they copied Samsung. Obviously the first iPhone full of Samsung parts. So there's a lot of back and forth that will be spelled out on appeal for years. But Apple, of course, catching a nice bid off of, not today, of course, but last week when this deal came out.
The interesting thing is Google is actually higher than where it was before that decision.
Which is odd given that the true target, obviously, of Apple's going after
Was
is
Android.
Google
Right.
and the Android operating system. Samsung was just a convenient fall guy. They could go after them first. But yet why Google would be higher on this when the dire folks are saying this might mean a revamping of the entire Android OS. I don't know why that would be. I can't see. You can look at this decision a lot of different ways. Beneficial for Google is
Well,
probably
Kindle
not one of
Fire
them.
is sold out. That's got to be good for Android, right?
Kindle Fire is
How do they sell?
because they make 6 of them and they're releasing a new one in about a week. So they're not putting
they're
out the
done.
old one. Exactly.
Yeah.
The old one's done.
They are cool, by the way. I would get
the
a
new-
Fire before I'd get an iPad.
Well, the new one supposedly going to be interesting. Same thing with that Nexus 7. Too bad Grigas isn't there. He has one of those. He loves that device.
I'm interested in when the Surface comes out. I bet you that's going to be kind of interesting.
Well, that's the other big debate. Microsoft, obviously, by creating this fantastic device, is undercutting all of their hardware partners. So all of their hardware partners have come out and essentially said, please price this exorbitantly so you don't eat into our market share. So if they come in and do a let's say, a Google and price it at $200-$300 at cost, they're going to blow away every other Windows 8 tablet. And that's actually going to be a very compelling device next to an iPhone or an iPad, because that's a real computer in many ways.
And the neat thing is, and this has been my big debate about my big issue with iPad and iPhone, is that I don't know why they never thought that they should be quickly and easily integratable with like a Mac. And they don't do that good of a job of taking an iPad and being something you can plug into a Mac. And
it's all iTunes based, which is still, that was their Trojan horse in the early days, but that program is so terrible that even on a Mac, it's still not exactly a benefit to have to plug in and sync.
Well, and that's the whole thing is one of the things, the guy that really wipes the floor with this is the guy that comes up with a pad like that you basically, you take it with you and then you walk into your house where you've got your supercomputer, you take your pad, dock it in, and you just get right back to work. And it's a seamless integration. That'll wipe the floor with that, and that's not somewhere Apple wants to go.
Well, what about the iPad Mini here? It's going to be
that's going to be
8 inches.
That's going to be a stupidest thing they've ever come up with.
1 inch bigger than all the other major competitors at the price of $299.
Is that the latest rumor? Is that the 8 inches
1 inch
now?
bigger?
1
8
inch.
inches?
Because Steve Jobs so famously lambasted 7 inches. I guess they couldn't come out and make a 7-inch tablet now. We made it 8 inches. 8 inches shows, of course, consumers will like that. But 7 inches, of course.
It is a stupid idea. All it's going to do is carp into their iPhone/iPad sales. I don't know. Why do you want what is the value of an 8-inch versus the 11-inch that you've got?
I see that. I mean, if this was a couple years ago, I probably would agree because this was the only game in town. But now with the Nexus 7, people putting it out at cost, it's a very viable device. No one's seen the new Amazon stuff yet, but it's supposed to be something similar, putting it out at cost. That's going to start eating into they have to see that in their rearview mirror.
You're holding the Apple IIe in your hand.
This is about 1,000 Apple IIes in my hand.
But you get what I'm saying. The Apple IIe was possibly the single most dominant computer ever, right? Basically, everybody owned an Apple IIe.
Everyone had a trash 82, the TRS 80.
Well, no. I'm just saying.
80.
If you go in 1987,
to remember
yes.
that.
in 1987, if you went to every single one of my friends' houses, everybody had an Apple IIe computer.
Yep.
And in
Or the old Commodore 64, that was a good one.
but that's the point. By 1990, everybody still had an Apple IIe, but then they'd gone to the IBM model because IBM was able to make something that was cheaper and easier to use because they outsourced different things and didn't do the whole and Jobs had been booted and.
Best thing ever happened to him.
You're looking at
Bounced back well.
You're looking at the pad version of the Apple IIe.
There is a lot of talk about that if we're seeing a similar play like we saw with the OS stuff back in the late 80s, early 90s, where Apple was this niche manufacturer. They had a very quality, very premium product that sold to a very small but very high end of the marketplace, whereas Windows crept up behind them with this very commodity type product that stole a lot of their features and they sold to everybody. And now we're seeing a similar play, perhaps, with the iPhone, iPad, and iOS stuff versus Google, Android, and all these other ones that are sneaking in much more utilitarian, much more functional, but also a heck of a lot cheaper and can appeal to the masses.
Android is ahead of Apple in a lot of things.
Well, this phone now, this phone I'm holding in my hand, listeners can't see it, but this is the new Galaxy S3, to give a plug for the much maligned Samsung these days. But this phone is the first Android phone, I've had several of them now, that I would say, here, Mom, here, wife, whoever it is, a very non-tech savvy person, you could use this. It is functionally equivalent, if not superior, to the iPhone just in every way.
Well, and the Android OS is being built into everything right now.
Yeah,
what people don't realize is your new refrigerator has Android built into it. Your new...
I need to have an email and a text message when I have new ice cubes.
Your microwave has...
Your ice cubes already.
Your microwave, your oven,
your ice cube
heating, your security system... Your entire Every piece of electronic equipment right now has Android in it. A lot of people don't know that, and that is where Google is ahead of Apple.
Looking to corner that market on refrigerator search coming soon in 2014. Your refrigerator searches for milk when you're out of it, and that's when they're going to put that targeted ad on your fridge.
You can go get them now. The Jan expiring 2015 put in Apple, the 300s. Mm-hmm. Okay, at a 30 vol should be worth about $3.
Sounds
nice. $300 out of the money. That's on a 30 vol. That's about reasonable.
That's
pricey.
I expected, I think, a little more. So that's not bad. Of course, 30 vol. That's a relatively because given what Apple's doing lately, that's a
25 vol.
Decent. Yeah, it's a relatively decent premium.
Apple's,
there you go.
VXAPL
let's pick up the eFlex for a SIBO.
There you go.
A couple of hundred of those. Put some Nababi size on for those, and just let them sit in the corner.
Yep. That'd be interesting.
Not much you can really
well,
spread off
I might,
those. You can do a lot of front month shorts against.
I might have to screw.
It's a lot of vol gamma going on.
I might have to screw with them and ask for the 300, 200, 1x2.
Oh, there we go. I'm sure they wouldn't hang up that phone relatively quick on you.
Can I get the 2015 eFlex 300, 200, put 1x2?
Hello. Is this that Sebastian guy?
What would your market be on that? So that means the 200s are probably worth what, like $1, $1.10,
$1.25, something like that.
$1.10. I would pay 80 cents for I would absolutely pay. So that would make fair value 80 cents for the 1x2. I'd pay $1 for the 1x2.
Yeah, the odds of Apple gapping to 100 by 2015
slim.
Pretty slim, I would think.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
there we go.
You could short the stock down.
I think we got to pick up the phone for the eFlex.
I'm going to laugh tomorrow when Apple, after everybody hears this, Apple's going to hit the hard to borrow list.
To be like, what's all this on this? What's all this on this Flex action
Apple's
in Apple
open
today?
open up at $700.
Yeah, it opens up $700. Then people hear this, and it immediately goes hard to borrow.
Mark, so when you say you're going to see Apple much lower in years to come, I want to hear some kind of prices.
I don't know. I mean, what's the market cap? $700 billion? All right,
around there.
It is not a $700 billion company long term. All right, Apple is not a bigger economy than France or whatever France produces, or Italy. Apple does not net produce more than Italy. It does have less debt than them.
I mean, what's Italy worth net?
Yeah, net. Not
nothing.
Much. What's the book value of that boot? Has got to be something there. There's some land, real estate value. I would think.
Well,
I guess
cash it all.
I believe recently.
Yeah, a couple of statues.
I believe that a magazine in England recently priced the Coliseum at about $140 million as the value in terms of brand.
Trade it.
Brand and all
cash flow generation.
Not cash flow. Is the value of the brand.
Oh, that's not tourism.
So like the name Coca-Cola, in and of itself is worth $50 million or $100 million.
Depends. Is it Coliseum with the full sand floor restored, so you can actually do some reenactments? Then that would be kind
of cool.
Can we put on a Roman outfit?
Last time I was there, they had partially restored, so you can see a little bit of it. But it's been a while. I know you'd like to go out in your gladiator outfits. Sometimes on Halloween, sometimes just on a Tuesday, Mark. So I know that would be a big, or just wear the outfit. It's very comfortable.
Yeah.
But speaking of, here we are, trading block. It's been mostly the Apple block of late, but there has been some other stuff. We joked before about the Grigas curse. Whenever he goes long on anything, it certainly doesn't look too well.
Did he buy Sears Holdings?
He didn't buy Sears Holdings, but he did buy Groupon. He was working that 501 bid, and it hasn't looked back.
No,
this thing can't catch a bid since. And of course, he made the mistake of publicly saying he was going to buy it on this show, so that of course locked him in. So he's been holding that 501 stock for a while.
Well, here's the problem.
He's going to force me to keep rolling these damn puts forever. I refuse to give up now until Grigas does.
Here's why Yelp is going the same way. Yelp had a huge short squeeze yesterday. I think everybody saw that. It was up 20%. It is eventually going to go the way of the Groupon. Generally speaking, when your clients hate you, your company model is not going to work.
Facebook should be in the toilet then too, because they're the worst Q rating that's out there in terms of public perception. And everyone loves them, everyone uses them, nobody likes them.
Well, no, but the difference being, like, I actually use Facebook advertising, and they're not bad to work with. It's not overly priced. They're effective. Blah blah blah. Groupon is everybody that has had a business transaction with Groupon will tell you how horrible the experience has been. And Yelp is kind of the same way. Yelp is a racket. They are legitimately a racket.
Didn't we have the strip club review commentary on Yelp
Yes.
the last time we brought them up on the show?
Yeah, we did. That was funny. But no, I mean, that's what they do. Their whole platform is pay us and we'll move your negative reviews lower and we'll raise your higher reviews up. Great.
All that stuff is
It's a racket. It's a racket.
It's called truth in marketing.
I think you could say Groupon and Yelp, 3 to 5 years, both in the pink sheets.
Oh, I think out of business. Groupon should have the single dumbest thing Groupon ever did was tell Google no.
All right, and with the talk of Yelp strip club reviews, I think we're going to dive right into the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the odd block.
All right, and welcome to the Odd Block. This is, of course, a portion of the show where we highlight some of the interesting and or unusual activity that was moving the old tape. Today, we're going to start with EMC. We saw some massive call blocks going up on EMC. Looks like somebody was chasing some deltas here.
That was a huge trade that went up. It was like 60, and it happened in chunks.
Yeah, weird big chunks.
And it was done on the offer. The guy, it was all call buying.
Yeah, he was lifting offers
and it was
calls.
2014 and 2013. Somebody thinks EMC is going much, much, much higher, and was willing to lift the offer to do so.
Let me run the listeners through what we're talking about here. We saw, like Mark said, we saw a lot of action in Jan 2014 out in the leaps, where the Jan 20s and Jan 25s were really lighting up the tape with some serious block trades. The Jan 20s went up 10,000 and then 5,000 times, both on blocks, both, as Mark said, lifting the offer at 8.25. We also saw the Jan 25s going up in a 25,000 contract block.
35,000.
Maybe I think after we did the write up, there was another 10,000 after, so a total of 35. The first 25,000 block went up for $4.95. Again, lifting the offer. This guy just wanted deltas in vol.
He wanted delta and vol.
Well, the interesting thing about this is that he also did it coincident with some very large blocks. This could have been obviously some of the DPMs. It could have been some of the DPMs putting up stock against it, which probably makes the most sense because these guys are dumping all these calls to them. Or it could have been a cross. Or it could have been the same guy chasing and wanting to get. That's why I say chasing deltas, because he wanted to get the upside in the Jan as well as the stock.
This had to have been a cross, and I'm guessing that where it traded on the Philex.
I don't have the exchange here, but it could have been the person who did the other side of it, hedging some parts of it.
I think it was on the Philex, and I'd be shocked if if I was an upstairs desk, I would be all over willing to sell this guy whatever he wanted on a day like this at those levels. The guy could hedge. The ability to hedge something like that in 2014 against a huge book, it can only be done by some of those big upstairs desks.
EMC is at least it used to be a fairly liquid enough name to be able to trade in and out of some of this
wouldn't
stuff.
Be shocked if it was against something that went up OTC even.
Probably. I mean, this kind of, like I said, this kind of name.
Alex Jacobson would have some sort of, it was OTC, blah, blah, blah.
In 1972.
Oh, went up on the ice. All the volume went up on the ice. All the volume went up on the ice, so yeah, it was absolutely a cross. It's probably Sweetman Cherry doing it.
Yes, that is exactly KYO /
We'll put it
Sweetman
this
Cherry.
way. They're paying 35 vol for that. The at-the-money SEP weekly is 25 vol.
Yeah, so that's a nice one. You can hedge that off. I saw some 2013s trades, so it looks like someone was
hedging in the interim. Yeah. Because if you're the guy taking the other side of this, and you have a lot of opportunities to come in and take some of this off. EMC, like I said, it's not one I've been watching actively a lot. I know it used to be the big name back when I was still on the SIBO. That was a very active one. It has since come off like most of the .com names did post 2001. But this is some fairly substantial size for EMC these days. Of course, if you're not familiar with EMC, they do a lot of IT technologies and services these days. Yeah, a lot of storage. They used to be primarily in storage, and now they kind of expanded beyond some of that. But yeah, a lot of leaps going up for some substantial size here in EMC.
That's not a bad sale. That's a good buy right. I would buy right that.
I mean, I would have tried to get in.
You have opportunities to get out of it.
I would have tried to have gotten on in that trade and probably been shut out.
You just need
depends where you are in the show order.
Shares.
Yeah.
The 3 million shares are going to be the hard thing to come by.
You had to get the first show, and then even if you miss the options, you just front run the stock, and then you're doing all right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much the stock gapped up on this. That's the typical Sean trade right there, front running the stock, Sean.
Vol up 10%. Vol up 10% in the 30-day, which is kind of funny. Wow.
All right, and speaking of storage, we're going to move on here to Seagate Technology, another name from back in the day that's still going strong today. This one's been on, it didn't look that great today. It was off a wee bit today, but recently touched a 12-month high of 35.71 back a couple of weeks ago. Of course, there's another one playing in the storage arena. They make a lot of hard drives and SSDs and hard disks and all that fun stuff. And this, I guess, looks like after hitting that 12-month high, a lot of people are lighting up the puts today, thinking this is either locking in some of those gains or thinking this is the top for Seagate in the near term. We saw the AUG weeklies. Looks like we had a roll coming in on the AUG weekly puts here. We saw about 4,000 of the weekly 33 puts being picked up for 71 cents, lifting the offer there, and then selling 2,000 of the AUG 35 puts again in the weeklies, right around the bid for 2.5. So this was a spread, a 1x2 that looks like it was closing given the respective open interest on those strikes. So looks like the next largest trade we had going up here was 1,500 of the SEP 35 puts, also hitting a bid there. Those are trading for around 271, 272. Of course, size open interest on that strike as well, 8,500 contracts. So it looks like this could have been a closing transaction. But a lot of put activity, including some rolls down here from the 35 strike to the 33 strike in the weeklies, as well as looks like some closing activity on those SEP 35 puts. And with that, we're going to close. Actually, before we go, I should hit on one thing. We mentioned earlier Shield, Sears Holdings not exactly having a banner day today. Of course, it was announced today that good old Shield is going to be booted out of the S&P. Of course, that's a relatively historic decision given the fact that Shield has been in the S&P since its inception back in 1957. So that's a pretty historic boot to give the old Shield. Of course, those guys Eddie Lampert and his crew who own Shield and Sears Holdings, probably one of the worst real estate trades ever made. They gobbled all that up right into the teeth of the 08 meltdown and the 07-08 meltdown, and of course, they never really looked back. And of course, it's apparent these guys really don't know how to manage a retail company because stock has not exactly been, and sales have not exactly been lighting up the old tape. We saw puts active again off this news in Shield. Of course, the stock was down about 8% today to a low 52 or so range off the news, and we saw the AUG 15 puts in the old weeklies lighting up again with the 52 half strike, picking up more than 1,500. The bulk of them lifting the offers for 35 cents. Against a previous open interest of less than 500 contracts. So a lot of opening buyers coming into Shield today. Just a lot of interesting stuff in Shield. Of course, a lot of this activity, what you'd expect given the predominantly negative news opening up in Shield. Did you guys
stock is getting
Did you guys run through any Shield stuff today with your mentees?
Yes, we looked at it. Just trying to see if how much real downside there is. But the problem is it's still, there's still a borrow issue in this thing. That's the reality. So it's hard to. There's a lot holding it up.
Yeah.
So
you can't borrow issue for years on that stuff.
Yeah, it's been a borrow issue, so that's kind of kept it, I suppose you can say, artificially propped, keeping some of the teeth of the bears really from doing their worst work.
We'll have clients call in, want to borrow some, be able to find them a couple thousand. Ask me, what's the possibility of getting bought in tomorrow? Pretty high. And then they turn the trade away. So it's definitely been a stock that's been hard to borrow for quite some time.
Yeah.
It's like the SEP borrow is only about 35 cents. It's not as nasty as it has been in the past. And I wonder if this should loosen things up a little bit. But I don't see how it's going to make a difference as far as loosening
I've been talking
things
to a lot of guys lately who have been active in and around Shield, and including some guys who are quote-unquote analysts in that sector, which we know what dim view we hold analysts there. But there's always been this speculation of what is holding it up aside from, and once you pull out that short interest question, and once you pull out that hard to borrow factor, there really isn't much else propping up Sears here. It's not exactly a lighting up the tape these days.
Well, that's got to be a lot of stock has to go. That's going to be more than what was the volume today in the underlying?
What's the float here on Shield? But whatever regardless of what it is, it's
only 3 million shares.
Yeah, that's not much at all. So this thing really could take a dive.
This has some room.
Yeah,
maybe.
Maybe we're talking about the Jan 2015 puts in Apple. How are the Jan 2015 25, 30
and
puts
you
in
know another
Shield
thing
looking like?
actually in Shield, vol at a 1-year low right now, as it is everywhere but the VIX.
Yes, good old VIX creeping up.
Put spread time, I think.
Getting some of its love, of course, is interesting. Getting all that, we'll hit on that as we go into the Around the Block segment, as we talk about the weekend and the holiday yet to come. But I think with that, we're going to close out the old odd block and dive right into the Express block.
The Express Block, brought to you by Options Express. Options Express lets you trade where and when you want for every level of trading. From advanced charting, free daily trading ideas, and free educational resources, Options Express is the online broker for all traders. Best of all, Options Express allows you to trade stocks, options, and futures all in a single account on powerful yet easy-to-use trading platforms, including mobile devices. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio for your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, and welcome to the Express Block. This is the portion of the show where Sean takes the reins and runs rampant, and I sit back and have a nice, tasty beverage. So, Sean, by all means, sir, what have you brought us today?
Well, Mark and everybody else on the panel and all the listeners, it's no secret. It's been a very light volume week. I mean, we're hearing about record-breaking low volume days. I believe Monday was the lowest option trading day in 6 years. Yesterday was
at OX or
I
just
believe
a total in general?
In general, I believe. And yesterday was the lowest volume day on the New York Stock Exchange for the entire year. So, I mean, I've been looking all week, waiting for some trades to come in and pretty much to talk about it on the show. And finally, I got a few today. Mainly ETF-type trades, but better than no trades. Moving on. I had a gentleman call in today, put a nice trade on the spiders. The week 5, he sold the 142, bought the 144 calls for a 11 cent credit 300 times. I believe the SPY closed around
Was his name one Tim Navabi?
It was a SPY trade, yeah. Buying the 144, selling the 142 is expiring tomorrow. For an 11 cent credit 300 times, I believe SPY closed around 140.70 range. So that might be a nice trade there. However, same gentleman calls about a few hours later, and he believes tomorrow we're not going to see much action. Goes out and swings around and goes to the NASDAQ ETF, the triple Qs, and moves into October, selling the 67 calls, buying the 63s 400 times for 308 debit. Believes he sees some upside in the future, but not right away. Believe the Qs close around 67.82. Is that
close? Yep.
That's actually a put spread, then, isn't it?
Nah, that would be a call spread.
Well, it's a call spread.
He's
that
saying
is a
synthetically a put spread.
Well, Mark, let me go on. This type of trader does this almost every probably Thursday, and he will more than likely cover these first things tomorrow morning.
So he's not rolling. He's not keeping them all the way through September expiration.
It's not like a week.
No,
it's not a Thursday.
No, I understand that,
Friday roll.
But this stock may never break 14 again, and it could potentially. And it is probably, when we get this next VIX drop tomorrow, when the next time the VIX goes from 18-ish to 15-ish, it is going to drop from the 1150 it was at today below 10, and then it will probably reverse split when it gets to 7. I'm just telling you, Guy, read a little on the VXX before you keep this roll trade on. It is. I've met many a person that has done this trade. You will not be pleased. The smart and the interesting thing, I get what he's doing because he's selling the skew. He's selling a little bit of that upside skew, but the smarter way to play this is in kind of a spread where in something like VIX where you buy. Like right now, if you wanted to play long vol, the smart way to play it would be to buy SEP and sell OC and swap and trade the spread. Not this. I'm sure he's making money, but I bet you I could come up with a way for him to make more.
Yeah, I'm always leery of when we joke about TVIX, I'm always leery of even of VXX, all these other ancillary products. So many of these products have just sprung up in the VIX ecosystem these days, and so many of them are just garbage, and they're constructed poorly, they perform poorly. I mean, if you're going to be doing this stuff, you're already trading a derivative of a derivative in many senses. Don't go out and trade some artificial construct on this derivative of a derivative unless you really understand it, unless you really are good. I mean, this guy seems like he has a fairly decent handle on it.
At least he understands the risk.
And he knows he's getting in and out pretty quick. He's not just rolling till SEP and then rolling and holding it in that position.
But a SEPOC, a long SEPOC future spread would make him a lot more.
That would perform better as well. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to go. This gets back into our debate before, direct spreads versus these esoteric products and trading in and out of these things. And what performs better.
Yeah. Generally speaking, if the only trade you did was to buy the original product and sell all the derivative ETNs,
all the junk.
You would make an incredible amount of money.
That should be a product. You should call it basket of junk. Sell the junk. Buy the VIX futures, whatever you want. Maybe you do combos in SPX.
And sell everything else.
Sell everything else.
I'm going to put that up. I'm going to list that tomorrow. Sell the junk. Courtesy
the basket
of the
junk
ETF. I like that. I'm going to do that. All right, Sean, anything else going on over at OX?
Mainly a lot of my clients are sitting on the sidelines. I mean, a lot are left for vacation. Few are hanging around waiting for Bernanke tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Those are the diehards. The rest are already on the beach.
Whether or not he's going to do anything. A little historic note for everyone. Since 1928,
yeah? Ooh.
The S&P 500 has closed up 73% of the time Friday before Labor Day.
Really? There we go. Maybe Groupon can finally catch a bid.
I like that. Every stock but Groupon.
Every stock. It literally has been down every day. It's been fantastic.
We actually sold juice in that and made money.
You know what he should? You know what Grigas should do is,
chase the dragon there, Andrew.
No, what Grigas should do instead of holding the stock is, since it's got a borrow rate, it's such a silly borrow rate. He should just do the, reverse and not sell the stock.
We were talking about the reversal before. There's a lot of things he should have done besides working that 501 bid.
And not.
The day he announces he's out of it, though, it's 8.
Going to 8.
10.
I thought that was Zynga. It's not true.
That's true.
Went down another 50%.
You felt that Grigas pain as well. There's a reason he's on the show today.
As soon as he says I'm out, I'm going in and buying nickel calls.
All of it.
I've already condition ordered to buy when
he's
John
out. Do you have that status on Grigas?
Options Express has a special order
for staff. When one of his staff members sells, I will buy.
It's the fake Grigas buy stop order.
The walking Grigas.
The walking Grigas call.
Limit buy.
I like that. That's good. Well, thank you for that, Sean. A lot of good ideas there in the old Express block.
I love
sell the basket of junk.
78%.
73% since 1928.
Sean coming in with a good factoid
Plus,
today.
with volatility all bid today, everybody's freaking out about tomorrow.
Man, we got the VIX up 31% since the 17th of August.
So thank you, Sean. That is going to do it for the old Express block. And now we're going to dive into an interesting question for you here, Sean, in the old listener mailbag.
Now it's time to empty the mailbag and see what our listeners have to say. It's the mail block.
All right, Sean, and here we have a listener mail that looks like it's aimed just at you, actually, by a fellow Sean, good old Sean Conrad, who's posted for us before on the old show. And he writes in asking about some new OX goodies for Canada. And he says, I love the sound of the new OX goodies that were announced. Goodies. I like they should have a little tab on the site. Goodies.
Just change the name of it.
Yeah,
goodies.
Exactly. OX goodies. The new OX goodies that were announced on the last option block. He means a few weeks back when Alex was on, and also when John was on talking about the walking stops. This functionality could really help me, but I can't see it. Now that I think about it, I've never seen OX Social either. I hail from Ottawa here in Canada. Am I going to have access to these tools? Excuse me. If so, when? I remember hearing that OX Social would be rolled out in stages to Canada and other international clients, but I don't think that happened. What's going on? Is there some reason why we can't just use the U.S. site and tools for our accounts? So, Sean, can you give our friend Sean here up in the Great White North an answer why he can't access all the hot new OX goodies?
Well, Sean, I appreciate you spelling it correctly, SEAN, the nice Irish way. So we're going to answer your questions in great detail and legitimately. Basically, I think you're probably referring to two tools. Mainly, Mark named one, the OX Social. That is closed to all international clients at this time. And it's more of a compliance reason. It's not because we don't want you to participate it. We would love for you to participate it. But we need to get pretty much all the ducks in a row, and that has been taken away. They started to, deliver it out to some, foreign countries, and they had to remove it all from everybody outside of the U.S. I don't know the exact detail, but it is a 100% compliance issue. More than anything, just to stay away from FINRA and the SEC and do everything properly. And once that is taken care of, it will be available to all Canadian clients.
Given the speed of FINRA's
international
action, I guess they probably can expect it within probably 2 years, I would think, right?
I mean, Sean, I'm not going to say your last name on the air, but if you would like to email info@optionsexpress.com, you can put your name on a list, and as soon as it's available, we'd be glad to email you so you can take part in the OX Social. The other tool, I believe you're talking about, the Idea Hub, which I talked about last show, was not allowed for the international clients yet. However, late last Friday, that was rolled out to all international clients.
Oh, great. Okay.
So you can now use the Idea Hub if that was the other tool you were referring to.
That one makes even less sense. Ideas should be universal. You shouldn't really need to lock
So the
those
Idea
down.
Hub once was domestic and non-international, now available to all clients. OX Social, still just domestic. Hopefully soon, by year's end, if not sooner, also available to international clients to partake in.
So there you go, Sean. You heard it here first. And we've heard this. One of the reasons I wanted to read this on the show is because we've received variations on this question many times over the past couple of years. Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? On various OX sites from international listeners. So it's good to lay it out there for our international listeners exactly what goes into rolling out these products. And sometimes we forget that we do have a very large international clientele. We talk about recording here in Chicago next to the L, and we think everyone's within a few hundred, a few thousand-mile radius, when the truth is we have people listening at Iceland in 2 a.m. in Australia, and so we want to make sure they have access to all this fun
Well, and think
stuff,
about
too.
this, international clients. Just be lucky you can get OX. There are a lot of U.S.-based brokers that are now like, we're not taking anybody from Canada.
Yes.
Because they're jerks.
But we have seen that. We work with a lot of the brokerage firms here, obviously on a sponsorship basis, doing a lot of different things with the website, with the radio shows, and many brokers have come to us over the years saying we just can't do anything with these international clients. We're so compliance restricted. OX is one of the few, you're right, Mark, who actually can. So if you are an international listener and you're listening to this show, I'm guessing you probably already have an OX account, but if you don't, they're probably one of the few ones that can actually from the U.S. perspective, that can actually work with you. So I'd certainly recommend you check them out, particularly because now you can access Idea Hub and get all those fun ideas absolutely free, and all the other OX goodies that are coming your way. So thank you for that, Sean, and thank you, both Seans, I should say, because Sean also wrote in. And if you want to follow in our Sean, the listener's footsteps, by all means, surf on over to theoptionsinsider.com, post your questions there, or hit us up on Twitter or Facebook, and we'll read your question on the air if it's interesting and or compelling, or it just makes Mr. Sebastian laugh. One of those 3 criteria. All right, thank you for that, Sean. And now we're going to dive right into Around the Block.
Around the Block.
All right, and welcome to Around the Block, set to the illuminating tunes of the L here in the old background. It is starting to be rush hour here in Chicago, listeners. But we are here recording this on our usual Thursday afternoon. This time we're going into a very long holiday weekend, so all that discussion of realized versus implied and of VIX selling off and all the other fun stuff we've been delaying is now time to get into that in full. Of course, we've said this many times on the show before, but this is, of course, an interesting and compelling and also potentially dangerous time to be a premium buyer going into these long weekends. We see people, or also a premium seller, we see people taking the mistaken belief that they can come in and hit bids on Friday afternoon or even Friday morning, a lot of times, going into these long holiday weekends and thinking they're getting a full weekend's worth of decay, when in reality they're already selling into Monday or perhaps even Tuesday's prices, depending on how much decay has already been taken out. The same thing on the other side. If you're coming in going long premium, if you don't time it right, you're going to be seeing a lot of that decay coming out over the weekend. So that's probably the first thing we'll hit on here around the block, because quite frankly, not many earnings lighting up the old tape these days, but we have seen a lot of interesting movements. I know, Andrew, you were talking earlier at the top of the show about how this is, one of the more active VIX days we've seen in quite a while. It's still underperformed given what we saw in the broad marketplace and the broad sell-off that we saw in the S&P today, but still it was one of the hardier days, I suppose you could say, from a juice perspective out in VIX land.
Well, it had a reason to move.
Yeah, finally.
But all it did was just crawl. It was just to crawl down the curve. It even underperformed on the curve. So I think they're maybe they're starting to hedge the Bernanke. What are we going to call that? The post Bernanke press conference vol crush syndrome.
Yeah.
I don't know what the acronym is
See,
for
the
that.
PBVCS.
That is the ultimate.
It's catchy. It rolls right off the tongue, sir.
It does. So I think they might have started pricing that a little today, maybe toward the end. And we'll see tomorrow. The reality is if we're up 0.5% or we're down 0.5%,
Oh my
who
gosh.
wants to go home owning a bunch of juice in the index? They're going to wear
Into
it.
a long weekend.
Yeah.
Well, Sean already told us we're going to be up tomorrow. I mean, that's a given right
That-
now.
that would be the
We have that
answer.
historical
73%
certainty
of
on
the
our
time.
side. So we know that going into it.
I'm going to go
what-
buy a SPY call
what's
tomorrow
the
morning
per-
in the opening.
On
You
the
know,
easy.
Andrew and I actually during the pit report today spent some time looking at kind of what does the VIX do after Bernanke speaks, and the answer is thud.
Get smoked. It's down like 3 points.
Yeah,
Not percentage, mind you.
So the
3
combination
points.
of that and the holiday, it's going to be
I mean,
a
we're
strong
looking at
thwacking
you could see the
tomorrow, shall we
VIX
say.
drop from near 18 to below 15 tomorrow.
I'm willing to fade that, actually. I think we may see another 100-point drop tomorrow.
Wow.
You think so? Post. So
You're not going with your
not only are
73%?
you rejecting the historical indicator that you just presented to us.
I mean, we just had a nice 1 month long rally of very, very, very low volume. I think very shortly, I mean, maybe not tomorrow, this whole Q3, people, can't make up their minds whether or not it's going to happen or not, whether or not it's factored in or not. Mark may have an opinion on that.
I don't. I personally don't think they should do it, but I think the Fed probably won't. But they'll say he's going to say something like,
We're really ready.
"We're really
Yeah.
ready. We're going to do it if we need
We'll keep
to."
that juice in the ether just
The
in
gun
case.
is loaded.
Yes.
And they may announce that they're gonna extend twist even longer, and that they're gonna keep rates even lower. They're gonna go negative rates. They're
know.
gonna-
I
see,
know
the thing
Bernanke
is,
sounded
the
like a
index-
used car
the index
salesman.
can still drop, and the VIX can still drop. The
Yeah.
vol can still come out of
I
it.
don't think you're going to hear anything different from compared to the Beige Book yesterday or the Fed minutes, was that late last week?
Right.
It's all just going to be wait for September, I believe 13th it is, when going to make some kind of decision.
Something like that. Yeah, we've seen the one thing I'm gonna be watching is Shield versus Lyondell. Which is in
The name that is replacing it. in
Shield,
the-
yeah,
pairs trade.
and that'll be an interesting pairs trade. And Google Vol is finally starting to rise again. I think there's a big trade there. So with that, I'm gonna hit the road. Andrew will take care of everything else, and I will wish everybody a beautiful long holiday. I hope you have a lovely Longo weekend.
So thank you for that, Mark. And, of course, not too much else really lighting up the old tape going into the long weekend. We have Bernanke tomorrow, and then pretty much the air coming out of the balloon. And I think you're right, Andrew. Even if we do sell off aggressively, we could still see vol coming in just because there's been no love for this vol going into any weekend that I can remember in recent memory, let alone a long holiday weekend. And you saw it today. It was already underperforming the curve. People were, for everyone who was coming in scooping up downside, there was some other guy saying, sold
You're
to
gonna have
you, and here's some extra for your mom and for your cousin and everybody else. So there certainly is that bias still of, which is crazy to me that in this environment, I obviously understand realized versus implied. We've underperformed dramatically in terms of realized vol. So people are looking to catch up and close that gap a little bit. So I understand it from that perspective, but still, just given the macro turmoil that we're poised for here on the global front, I think any sort of aggressively short premium, short vol trade has to have some sort of upside kicker just in case the worst comes to pass.
Oh
these
no,
days.
I still own some puts in the SPY or something
yeah,
like that.
just in case.
Well, you just have some junk. Well, it's also too. Don't forget from a strategy point of view. Do you sell to get short, right? To get short Vega, are you going to sell calls or are you going to buy puts at a low vol? You're never going to sell calls. I mean, and when the VIX is trading 50 and you want to do the 1x2 call spreads for, ridiculous credits, that's a different trade. When we're down here at the 17 handle in the VIX, you don't want to be aggressively selling calls to short the vol, right? Because you could be wearing it. But if you could buy a put in the VXX, right, that can perform to the gamma, hugely, right, for a fraction of the risk. It's just you pick the way you want to short the volatility. So the lower the vol goes, For me, it's more like cheapy puts and time spreads. So every level of the VIX actually has a different way to short it. This is kind of what we teach at options. It's one of the things, right? Every level has a position type. So you want to get the right position type to keep the risk low, right? So the short put, just as an example, for the VXX, I would say that's an okay, like a day trade, all right? Like I want to just catch the VIX pops. It's the right way to do it, and I'm going to close it within a day or two. So as a vehicle for that, that's a good idea, right? Because you want to catch it. If you want to fade VIX overall, like the out-of-the-money put spreads, the time spreads, because the VIX has a tendency to kind of sort of moves down. And exactly. So you can sort of pick the velocity of what you think is going to happen, and then you shape the trade around that. But you don't sell calls to get short volatility when the VIX is at 17.
No,
because it could ruin your whole.
We've
Plus, there's no edge in a short call.
There's no edge, and we've all seen the one thing that tends to dramatically outperform in any sort of dramatic scenario in the marketplace is VIX upside. That stuff just
Well, if
explodes.
you look at the last two Septembers, it was right around this time. VIX took off from about 20 and almost doubled from September all the way to December. So this could be the beginning of, I don't want to say 31%, even though Mark is gone. However, we did
by all
see
means, sir.
a rather nice pop from 13.5 to 18, and 10. And that's not 10 business days. That's 10 days. So
it was nothing. It was pretty impressive on no movement
and very little volume. So I think this gentleman who spoke to me today actually brought up the history of the VIX in just the last 2 years, and he's really thinking that we could see 25 to 30 at this time next month on the VIX.
This is the same guy who was rolling the VXX.
This is not the same.
So
guy.
the two things that have to happen. One is you have to look at the euro. Right? The Chinese come out and say they will buy European debt under conditions. The euro keeps rallying. It's harder for me to paint a picture of global collapse with the euro continuing to rally if the ECB steps in and sort of basically starts to run the TARP like we've been talking about for 6 months.
Right? You got Bernanke, ECB, and everybody else out there floating around.
So for short-term wise, if they do that, that's what started the rally in the first place after Spanish bonds. What are they posted 7.8% yield or something like that, which they tried to stop. So if that comes undone, then I see you can get that scenario, right? You can see 25, 30 VIX without any trouble. But if liquidity starts to step in and scoop that stuff up, what drives us to 25? It's possible, but we're not seeing any real realized volatility. There's not much movement in the market. I think things are getting pushed up. It's sort of like pushing your finger through a Jell-O. It's just there's no real sellers and there's no real buyers, so it's very easy for things to move higher or lower either way.
Well, what moved the market over that month when we popped was Bernanke. Draghi came out, said he's going to save the euro no matter what he has to do. Then he's kind of been backing off that. He's got September 6th where he's got to start to decide what he's going to start doing. Buying bonds, cutting more rates, and then Ben Bernanke's got to make a decision also in September. Because this is why this trader believes that all these promises that drove the market up 5, 6, 7, 800 points on the Dow in a matter of 3-4 weeks, it could hammer it down in 1 week, and then we could see the VIX 25 to 30.
Yeah,
so that's a good reason not to sell calls.
Yeah, again, if one of those puts were to come undone or suddenly be taken off the potential table, that could be something that sets the bottom out from under the market a little bit.
Right,
and all of a sudden
and then you could do the classic back spread, right? So, is it possible? Sure, it's possible. So you buy some junky downside in the SPY, and you buy a couple of puts in the VXX, and then you just say, I'm done for the month of September. You just back spread what it is, depend on the gamma, and wait.
Yeah, that's what you think is going on. That a back spread is an ideal trade for that. You set it up and set it and forget it, as the old Ron quote was.
You kind of have to.
That goes
one
against
is really
your
doing
doing
stuff
credo.
Right?
Oh yeah,
it does go against, but sometimes you have to take a back spread.
Do much with it. Yeah.
No, sometimes you just want the gamma and you just want to let it go.
Let it work for you.
And it's really this last couple years has been the first time where the market's become like a binomial event, like global economic meltdown. S&P up and down, 20, 30, 40 handles. Yeah. It's ridiculous. So, and it's a fact of there's low liquidity. So it's all, is it possible? Sure it is. But right now, I still look at realized volatility, and there's still not a lot of movement. So the thing is, the market has to move and stay moving for us to get up there.
So you're thinking more along the lines of VIX cash kind of languishing in this, let's say, 15 to 18 range for the next month or two, instead of the apocalyptic 25 or the perhaps tranquil.
Let's not forget
12,
about
13.
the election in November. I do have one gentleman who continues to pick apart the November 20 calls, and he just sits and buys 5, 10, 15 contracts a day, in the $5 range. He's just picking and picking, slowly building position. It was down in the low 4s. It was in the high 6s. This guy's been doing this for over a year.
I didn't pull out the VIX futures today. What are they pricing out for the longer-term futures around the election
the
time?
September.
Are they pricing in
Just look at the September VIX futures as an example. They're I think almost hit 20 today.
Well, there you go.
Right.
I mean, they're pricing in a wee bit of activity, so something to watch going forward. But of course, we're looking a little bit more near term here on this Around the Block going into the weekend, and it certainly seems like there's no shortage of interesting ways that, and of course, interesting divergent opinions on how to play vol, which of course makes this segment so fun, and of course makes a marketplace. We can just be trading in and amongst ourselves all day. I still like the idea of creating that basket to sell the junk. I like that. I think we should pursue that for another show, the basket of junk.
Exactly. I do have the back spread on myself. Full
Do you really?
disclosure.
So there you
Yeah,
go.
the index
Set it and
back
forget
spread.
it. Go
So
away to the beach.
I don't disagree with you. I always like to have a little
something in the back,
something under my
in the chamber, as
I was
going to
say under my skirt, but that probably doesn't really. You're
wouldn't-
going to have to get cut.
Yeah, that works. That works. I mean, you're wearing your Scottish kilt here.
My Scottish
You can call
kilt.
that a skirt if you like.
Nobody knows that I do wear a Scottish coat. Now everybody knows.
From the famous Scottish Giovinazzi's.
Exactly. That gigantic clan of
Yes.
one in Scotland.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you for that, Sean, Mark, and Andrew. And unfortunately, that's going to bring to an end this live version of the option block. But before we go, I'd like to check in with all of my cohorts here on the old All-Star panel to see what they have coming up for the coming week. Maybe we'll mix it up. And Sean, we'll start with you. What's coming up in the land of OX for the coming holiday week?
I want to touch back on the Idea Hub. It's like a tool I talked about earlier. I believe it was one of the tools the gentleman wrote the email on. We have a lot of webinars on the Idea Hub now, and we have them all sorts of different hours. So if you're a 9 to 5 working, gentleman or woman, we do have webinars at night from 8 to 9 o'clock where you can sit in, learn about the Idea Hub. There's early morning ones and there's midday ones, and they're almost just about every single day. And you can go to theoptionsexpress.com. If you already have an account with us, go to the Education Center, sign up for the webinar there to learn more about the Idea Hub. Or if you do not have an account yet, open an account for free at optionsexpress.com. There is no minimum funding, and you can slowly learn about the Idea Hub and all the other many more powerful tools that Options Express offers. And lastly, I want to point out we do have a live workshop. I did touch on this last show, but it has not reached yet. It's September 8th in Kansas City at the Overland Park Convention Center. So anybody out in Kansas City at the Overland Park Convention Center area, feel free to sign up again on optionsexpress.com. That's a free webinar all day long from 8:30 to 4:15 Eastern Time. And you'll be able to learn all about the Options Express platform, a few different trading ideas from 2 former market makers that work for our education department.
Barbecue going to be there?
Actually, somebody asked that last show. So far, no barbecue, but refreshments will be there. and you're also...
How long have you been sitting on that one there, sir?
And you're
That's a
also
good
allowed
one. I
to
like
bring
that.
guests. So if you have an account on Options Express and you don't want to go by yourself, feel free to have a friend of yours sign up. Sign up on the same link that you do. When you log in again to your Options Express site, underneath the Education Center, go to the live events. You can email the link to your friend. You both can go. He does not or she does not need to have an account on Options Express to attend this free live show.
There you go. You heard it here first. And lots of great refreshments to be had at the OX,
But no
at the
barbecue.
OX Live with no barbecue. And our listeners are scratching their head like, what the hell are they talking about?
Director
So
of Education at
you have-
Option
you
Express.
have to listen
that was
to-
his old handle, his old acronym.
You have to listen to some old shows, or Andrew just explained it to you right now in a very succinct fashion. Well done, sir. But speaking of succinct, what's coming up in the land of the pit, Mr. Andrew?
Coming up in the land of the pit, We are revamping some of our educational materials for the fall.
Back
doing a
to
little
school
upgrade.
season here at
Back to
Option
school
Pits.
season. You will be seeing lots of for people silver gold. We'll be upping the content, some surprises for people. We'll actually be offering more live content with gold, and we will be basically upgrading the whole silver course. It's been hugely popular for us. I cannot believe it myself. So we will be, upgrading better, and also we've had a lot of feedback too from people, so now we could move things around. And you'll be seeing that probably, around October. So that's the latest. Those are the two biggies for us currently.
Cool.
Besides our
Great.
fantastic new and spacious office right
Yes.
here in the Loop.
Very luxurious. And may I recommend anyone who comes to visit Option Pit, by all means, visit the bathroom because it's a place to behold. It's something special indeed. Speaking of overhauls and things to behold, of course, many of you listeners are listening to this show on the Options Insider Radio Network or maybe streaming it from theoptionsinsider.com. We are undergoing some massive, massive upgrades over at the old mothership as we speak. They're in the process of putting the finishing touches on all that stuff. We'll be flipping the switch this weekend, so some of you coming to theoptionsinsider.com next week may notice a lot of interesting, different things going on there. A little bit changed to the layout, and a lot of the functionality upgrades will be on the back end for a lot of us running the site. Gives us a lot more powerful tools to help deliver content to you guys, but you will see some changes on the front end. You'll also be noticing a lot of changes with the radio going forward, not in the content so much, but in how it's laid out on the site and how you can access it in a lot of different ways like that going forward. So by all means, surf on over to the site, check it out. If you're just a listener to the radio show, then by all means, check out the website as well. If you are a regular visitor, let us know what you think about the changes, what you like, what you don't like, and we'll be sure to keep that in mind because this is, as everything online, is an ongoing process, and so we'll be starting the upgrades this weekend. You'll be seeing a lot more rolling in the coming weeks and months. So by all means, surf on over to theoptionsinsider.com. You can check all that out for yourself. And of course, all of our listeners out there have a great Labor Day weekend if you're here in the States. If you're not, then just have a great weekend wherever you're listening to this, including the Great White North and all of our listeners up there. And we'll see you next time right here on the Option Block.
Become a part of the Option Block. Just visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/forum to post a question for the hosts. You can also submit questions to twitter.com/optionblock or leave a voicemail at 312-544-9356. Make it interesting and your question just might make it on the air. The Options Block is property of the Options Insider Incorporated. All rights reserved. The preceding program was a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/radio or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.